You can't get the technology.
I'm on it. I'm on it. I'm on it. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the
Good
show.
evening, folks.
We will get Pat on in the moment, but first of all, just want to introduce our guest at the side there, Alistair. Good evening, Alistair.
Good evening to you, John. Good evening, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on the show tonight. Thanks very much for having me, and I look forward to contributing to the show. Should be a good one.
Excellent, excellent. Turn my phone off, John. Come on. Be professional. I just want to announce, first of all, that we've got our nominations in for our rugby candidate, Ashley. So his paperwork's in and he'll be on the nomination list tomorrow after 4 p.m. But we'll post something up about that. I just want to announce that. And, if you look at the flyer, it says take the high road, but I've scrubbed off high and wrote take the together road, because together we are stronger in the UK. There's no doubt about that. And, we love all the areas of the UK. I've been all over it myself, and I've just recently, after the blessed Arlene, before Arlene passed away, I spent quite a few years up there in Inverness and climbing the mountains and looking at the locks and all that lot. And it's just beautiful. And I can't believe, well, I can believe, but this is our country. This is Great Britain. This is the United Kingdom. A beautiful place in the entire world, if not the most beautiful place, certainly to us. But anyway, we're going to get on with the show. And I noticed something tonight, and I've heard a bit of news, and it's about Marine Le Pen. And I just want to ask the panel the thoughts on the fact that she's been arrested, charged with a crime, banned from running in elections. The crime doesn't even seem that bad. It's not like anybody made any money off it. But the thing that gets me, they've charged her with this crime against you. There was investigations into members of the European Parliament taking money from China 2-3 years ago, and other areas around the world donating to them, like we always complain about over here. But obviously that's all right. But Marine Le Pen, it isn't all right. But what are your thoughts on that? Over to you, Alistair.
The immediate thought is, isn't this just typical of what some on the left tend to do to their political opponents? Now, to be frank, I don't quite know the nature of the charge, but to the extent that I understand it, it was something that was fairly commonplace among all the members of the European Parliament at the time. It was a bit like our expenses scandal, which we had in Westminster about 10 years ago. Things that were done that everybody just took for granted, and really maybe on a closer look, they perhaps shouldn't have been doing that, but it was just generally regarded as the done thing. To the extent that I can see her crime, that's what she was involved in, with other people, of course, but because of the fact that she and her party are representing a very real existential threat to the French political regime, then they have pulled out all the stops, just like what they did against Trump. And how can we get this person convicted? For the average Joe looking on, though, they must think, goodness me, this is a bit ridiculous. And I think this might backfire actually upon the French establishment, in the sense that people who perhaps weren't paying attention might start paying attention now and thinking, goodness me, why have they gone to such lengths in order to deliberately exclude her from the presidential race? And my understanding is that there are young up and coming people in the Front National who I should imagine will step into her shoes, and in fact might actually even be more effective than she is. So they may be facing younger people in the FN who are going to be reaching out to to the younger demographic in a way that perhaps Marine Le Pen has not been able hitherto to do. So it might actually backfire on the French establishment. I certainly would like to think so. But goodness me, it's perhaps no surprise that they've gone to these lengths. But it just shows you the determination that they have to beat their enemies. When they can't beat them at the ballot box, they're thinking, how can we find something on this person in order to actually get.
You know what, Alistair? The whole system now, and I don't know if the penny will finally drop for Joe Public, as you say. The whole system is corrupt from top to bottom. It's a criminal system. It's a criminal cabal that rules over us. Marine Le Pen's only crime is that she is going to win this election if she stands. And they hate winners. They hate opponents. Just like Trump, just like this guy in Romania who's now being incarcerated because he was going to win the election. You see, you think of all the multi-million immigrants that are pouring in and milking our benefit system. They've never contributed a penny. They're milking our health system, never contributed a penny. Milking our education system, never give a penny to anything to us. They've just come to take. This is theft. Our national wealth is being stolen off us. And it's not only being stolen off us by immigrants, it's being stolen off us by big corporations. Looking at the water companies, what's happening there? They've multiplied huge debts. I mean, £20 billion each company in debt. They've stolen this money off the British taxpayer. Everything, the civil service is a huge scam. The police now, everything's a racket now. Everything that we took for granted. See, Britain and Europe had great government in the 1950s and 60s, and it was based on our historic background, Christian background of decency and honesty, hard work, being reliable, doing your proper job, doing your duty. That's all gone down the plug hole now. These people are just milking us. They're just scamming off us. They're just stealing our money, stealing our taxes. This is what Elon Musk has exposed in America. It's all a racket. The state now is just a racket to steal our taxes. The money we put into the system, say we put £100 into the system, maybe £30 of that will be spent on providing the services we need. The other 70 goes to all the actors. They get the money and share it out amongst themselves. And this is a global phenomenon. We've seen with this international aid, that's all a racket. So to accuse Marine Le Pen of somehow misusing her expenses, it's just absurd. Yeah. It's absolutely absurd. I mean, these people are just a bunch of thieves. And that means the legal system no longer has any credibility. The political system no longer has any credibility. The only way they maintain power is by siphoning money off to their constituents, the groups that they control, like the public sector unions, like the liberal professionals, like their agents in the media, like the deep state, that finance these people to keep them in power. We are now the victims of a criminal operation to destroy our country. Let's be frank about this. And it's accelerating. The program of destruction that Marine Le Pen was exposing, that Donald Trump was exposing, that the AfD were exposing in Germany. Hopefully someone, maybe even Nigel Farage, will expose in this country. But there's a huge criminal conspiracy against the native peoples of the West to defraud them, to strip them of their assets, and to strip them of any real democracy. This is what it's about. These criminals do not want to be held to account. And if we don't wake up, and this is what COVID was all about, control, to stop us rising up against these people, to subjugate us. And we've got a heck of a battle ahead. And we're going to focus on Scotland tonight. But, I mean, we've had some politicians in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon and so on. The SNP was just another aspect of this criminal racket which is taking control of politics in the West.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there. You did mention that in the 50s and 60s, in your opinion, it was really quite good. So what would you see as the kind of, what happened if in Britain, in your mind, around about what time to shift this power that had been good.
1966.
Uh-huh.
1966, Alistair, Harold Wilson won a 100-seat majority, and he began to destroy the Christian foundations. He legalized abortion, he legalized sodomy, he legalized easy divorce. He began to attack the family, the church. He put in people in power in the church who were non-Christians in the higher echelons of the Church of England. So there was no resistance to this, and the corruption began to seep right through society. We suffered a moral avalanche. We lost our morality, and this whole sort of seedy, money-grabbing, perverted, sort of culture took over our nation. And I mean, Thatcher attempted to get it back, but she wasn't radical enough on the moral and social issues. She was radical on the economic, but not on the moral and social. And we've never rectified our country. Now, America had the Christian right, and then now they got the MAGA. They've got mass mobilization of people who believe in morality, who believe in right and wrong. We haven't had that in this country. I mean, this is what we are, a Christian party, because we believe in right and wrong, truth and lies. And unless you can clearly delineate these things, everything becomes corrupt.
That's actually a good point, and that's a point that you don't hear articulated, is the fall away of the national religion, which helped to put many people, helped to give guidance to people and help people to understand as well. The less materialistic as well, because a Christian view isn't going to be necessarily a money grabbing one for most people. It's going to be one that puts everything into some kind of order, especially a national order as well. And so a lot of the economic things that hit the United Kingdom may not have hit us if we had perhaps had more of a, as you say, a Christian understanding of politics. Yes, so I think, as you say, America to an extent was sort of protected against that because it had more of an organized religious group, whereas in the United Kingdom it didn't seem to cut through for some reason at that particular time. It was one of the problems that has given rise to where we are today, definitely.
Just let me. So, Pat, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Great stuff. Great stuff. So, right, quickly, Marine Le Pen. What do you think of the situation, Pat?
Well, people have got to remember that the political route does work, and the Front National, now the National Rally, are basically in government. I mean, recently there was a big vote in the French Parliament, and Macron wanted to limit immigrants getting benefits, saying that they must be working for 3 years, and they couldn't get it through without Marine Le Pen's MPs in the Parliament. And that, the National Rally, they said, no, well, we want to make it 10 years. So they couldn't get it through unless they got the votes, and they made it 10 years. And, they're making massive changes in France. And what they have done to exclude Marine Le Pen from standing, I think it's a good sign. I tweeted this earlier on today or yesterday. They're becoming very desperate because they're not going to be able to stop this surge. And like Paul mentioned, in Romania, and Alistair mentioned that someone else, younger, brighter, will come through, and they're not going to be able to stop it. And people, it's going to come to a crossroads eventually. Will the EU go full on dictatorship, military style? That's a possibility, because they're not going to want the National Rally in government. They're not going to want the AFD in government. So it's disappointing. I'm sure it's very disappointing for Marine Le Pen, because she's been fighting all her life against the establishment. But I was good friends with the National Rally organizer in Max Burgoyne Law, and he was Marine Le Pen's organizer in the UK, and done a lot of activism with him. He's now moved out of the UK temporarily, and he was quite close to our party. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of their party. They're a bit politically correct, but at the end of the day, they're more or less in power, and we should congratulate that. Hopefully that they'll find a way to win in the end. And the way things are going, it's unstoppable. I was outdoor knocking tonight, and I was just like chasing up a few people I'd give previous leaflets to. Didn't have time to talk to them. Sometimes you knock on a door and they're just coming in the door with their shopping, and you're canvassing, and you're like, oh, this is my leaflet. Oh, I'll have a read of it later. And they go in, and then you mark down on the sheet, GL gave leaflet. So I chased up a few of them tonight, and I said, well, I've actually done my latest newsletter. Lots of yeses, agree with everything. It's just unbelievable. Like, people are so sick of the Lib Lab con. All it takes is someone to put a proper campaign in, and you're going to get a very good chance of winning. I'm not going to say I'm going to win, but I'm going to get a very good vote. And it's only a year to go now. Like, after this election, it'll be a year to go to my election. And like John said, really good news. Ashley Morgan has been accepted his nomination signatures in rugby. I went out canvassing with Ashley about 3 weeks ago. We done one road, just one side of one road, and we had our rosettes on, knocked on the doors, and they was like, yeah, we're going to be voting for you. We didn't even say anything, didn't even get a chance to say anything. And they knew who he was. They said, we love your leaflet. And Ashley couldn't believe it. So out of about 15 houses, we got 11 positives. So that's like 2 or 3 maybes and like 8 point blank yeses. Got a couple of no's, but very, very positive response. It's just a matter of getting the people to do it, getting out there, come and join us. If there's anyone watching, please come and join us. But, this stream is supposed to be about Scotland, and I'm so glad that Scotland voted to stay in the Union when they had that referendum. And I heard some very interesting things on a space the other day. This guy, he was in favour of reform, but he went off reform because, you might know something about this, Alistair, but he said, this guy was a Celtic supporter, but he realised he wants the Union to stay together. And but he was furious because Reform used candidates for the general election who were previously separatists. Have you heard about that?
I've heard that there's maybe 1 or 2 people who came over to Reform from the SNP side.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I don't know any names or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that they still believe in separation. They may have come over because they've seen the light, as it were. So I can't really comment on that. But I've heard 1 or 2 sort of rumors like that. But I know that Reform anyway appears to be quite a unionist, a pro-UK party, and it seems to draw most of its, virtually all its support in Scotland from people who want to keep the UK together. And I'm sure it will actually at the Scottish elections, which are coming up on the 7th of May 2026 next year, I'm sure it will get votes from former SNP voters, because a lot of the SNP people are disenchanted with a lot of the SNP's wokery, and especially disenchanted with the extent to which the SNP doubles down on mass immigration into Scotland.
Yeah.
The last figures that I looked at, a town larger than Paisley. Now, Paisley is Scotland's 5th largest town, and a population greater than Paisley came into Scotland. I think it was the 23-24 year or the 22-23. I need to check, but one of these years, the last figures for which we've got, gross immigration into Scotland was bigger than Scotland's 5th largest town. Now, that's not mass immigration, that's extreme immigration. I mean, that's just ridiculous levels. And if you live in a big city such as Glasgow, which I do, you do notice it. And it's been really ramping up in the last 3 years. You never used to walk about the local supermarket and see guys with that, these long, I don't know what they call them, but they're not surrounded. They're just like these white things that go down, that covering that a certain type of person wears. You never used to see guys walking about with flip-flops wearing that manner of dress. Now you see it, so it's really obvious now. And it's as a result of people like John Swinney. I mean, when they're given an opportunity to talk about immigration, they will advocate for more of it. And they'll do it on the basis that apparently we're all getting older, and apparently that's a problem, which is not actually, but they claim that it is. And then if that doesn't convince you, then they'll say we need them for the NHS. Well, so it's the same things, but they'll never actually, that type of person will never say, gosh, maybe I'm wrong. People like John Swinney have spent their entire political career all through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, all believing in this liberal idea of mass immigration and essentially open borders, and they're never going to change now. It's almost like a generational thing, that kind of age group among the Swinneys and the Salmons and the Sturgeons and so on. They're totally committed to this. But what they don't realize is a lot of the people who are supportive of Scotland and people who are Scottish nationalists, inverted commas, they don't want to see Scotland turned into something that it's not. They want to keep Scotland recognisably Scottish. So while we disagree with the SNP on things like breaking up Britain, we as unionists are still nationalistic for Scotland. We want Scotland to continue to be recognisably Scottish. And so I think that's the way things are going to go. I think the SNP is going to find, if it continues down this continued promotion of extreme immigration, it's going to lose support among valuable members of society, especially their young demographic. They're going to lose support on that as well, because people are just going to say this is ridiculous. So I think they're going to suffer, but it's the same throughout the United Kingdom. When we go to the polls next year for the Holyrood election, Labour agree with the SNP on immigration. I mean, Labour, if anything, are just as bad, if not worse. It's led by Anas Sarwar, who's not going to talk against immigration. Sorry, John.
No, I'm just saying Sarwar. That's his name, innit? Yeah. Well, he would be well placed actually to speak against immigration. He could come up with a line, well, I'm an immigrant myself, but there's too much immigration, and nobody's going to call him any bad words. But he won't even do that. He won't even take the opportunity to use the race card in that manner.
What exactly happened to our friend Hamza Youssef? Because was he forced to resign, or did he get in trouble?
He was forced to resign. Because there was a vote taken, a vote was going to be taken of no confidence in him, and he had lost the support of the Greens, which he needed in order to stay First Minister. So rather than actually going to a vote, he resigned before he lost the support of the Greens. And why did he lose the support of the Greens? I can't exactly recall, but it was over some stupid thing that none of us approve of anyway, like, some green thing, like he wasn't strong enough on something that the Greens wanted. I can't remember. It might have had something to do with climate change or something like that. But he should never have got into bed with the Greens, ever, because they're going to just be your downfall.
I mean, that guy was extreme anti-white. I mean, it was just unbelievable that someone like him could be the leader of one of our home nations. It was disgusting. Yeah. And then, like you say, you got the other guy from Labour. He did a similar speech to outdo him, the anti-white speech.
Yes. But Hamza Youssef doesn't have any real loyalty to the United Kingdom. And this was proven last year, because I was just looking at this today as it happened. This was the front page of the Scottish Sun on the 7th of August last year, when Hamza, I may flee the West, which was fantastic news. I mean, that was greeted with great approval. We were meant to think that was a bad thing, but in fact, it was a good thing as far as we're concerned, because it was during the time of the Southport tragedy and one or two of the troubles in England, and he thought that this was going to come up to Scotland and it was time to leave. So he was not. It didn't take very much for him to think, "Oh, hello, I don't want to stick around." Unfortunately, he's still with us. You asked what's happened to him, but he's a backbencher. We never hear about him. And hopefully that will continue.
So he's still an elected MSP, so to speak.
Yes. And is he going to stand next year in 2026? I don't know. At the moment, he appears to.
And what happened to the Christian lady who was supposed to be the leader of SNP, and she got hounded out because of her Christian faith?
Well, she is still in the SNP. And right. she's a backbencher, but we never hear of her at all. And in fact, the SNP, as a totally heretical party, a party just full of anti-Christians, largely. I mean, it's no place for her anyway.
No, I was astonished that she was there.
Party. Yeah. But she's still around, maybe hoping that she can take over sometime in the future. But it's a very uncongenial party for somebody who is genuinely a believer.
Is there any chance that she would join the family party?
I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure she's in politics for a political career. And while the family party is very sound on many issues, the chances of her being elected on that party platform are possibly few and far between.
Yeah.
So she might find that the Tories are a better fit for her. My understanding is, last time I heard, her husband is actually a member of the Conservative Party. So how the pair of them handle that, I have no idea.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt. Thank you. Good evening to the chat, everyone in the chat there. Good evening, Antonella. Lovely to see you. Antonella, you vote for who you want to vote for. The thing is, we keep thinking, what we're all thinking is, like, there's two political. No, we just want everybody voting, and as many people running as independents or small political parties as possible. That's what we want now to break down our government. We don't need an overall leader. We just need to break down the control they have. And Labour have lost hundreds of thousands of votes in the Northwest. Tories are absolutely nearly wiped out. There's other parties coming up, such as the Workers' Party. Yes, I see that UKIP have been very active. Now, even if they get a couple of council seats, that'll be better than anything. That's what we need. So we need people to take these seats, and it's happening across the country. You might not see it at the top level. You'll just see blue and red painted all over the place. But if you look at the detail underneath, the voting thing is changing. So, and there is big change. And I just want to say, it was Pat who said this to me 5 years ago. He said, John, you can smell it in the air. It's changing. People are going to start voting differently. There's going to be more political parties. There's going to be a chance for everybody to get, like, rising up. Small parties, independents, whoever. And that's happening right now. It's happening right now. So going back to Scotland, I've been to Glasgow and Edinburgh a couple of times in my past, for shows and stuff like that. But I've never been further than that. In 2018, I headed up to Inverness with the late Arlene Bennett. and ended up going to Dingwall. And as I'm going out across the Keswick Bridge, I said to her, "What are all these houses being built for?" And then it's like that all over. And even spending a couple of years in Scotland and getting to know people there, they were saying how the change was happening in Inverness, how they're seeing different kinds of people, you know, on the streets and stuff like that. And it was funny because I were up there a month, and the day before I come back, it was the, I think it was the first, not the first parade, it was the first, it was an LGBT parade in Inverness. And me and Arlene attended it. I spoke to the Christians who were very against it, and I even ended up speaking to like the main vicar who was leading the march. And I went up to him and I said, "The other Christians in Inverness said like it's against the book that you're doing this," and then he had to try and explain himself, and then and I caused a bit of a bit of a bother that day, but not nastily or anything. But that was like my first experience of like LGBT in Glasgow. Well, in Scotland,
In Inverness of all places. I didn't know they had them up there.
It's dead far up, and but I had a bit of a nightmare getting there. I went up. We went up on the coach at that time, but the first time I went on the train, I got to Edinburgh, changed there. The train set off to go. Now, I didn't know that it's just one track. It's not like there's two tracks. You get a train going one way. It's not like it's one track, and the trains have to change, have to go around each other in stations. And we got about 30 minutes out, and the woman said, "Oh, the toilets are broke, so we're going to have to stop at every stop, like to Inverness," which extended the journey for an hour and 15 minutes. And I got an Inverness late, and we had to book an hotel because there were no buses back, and it was like 40 quid for a taxi, and it only cost us 30 quid to stay in the King's Highway. But beautiful city, Inverness, beautiful city. From the bridge, there's I think from the bridge, some guy was saying there's like 12 churches in view, or more than that. And you know, the architecture, the area, the countryside, it's just unbelievable. But I had a month up there, so we travelled around, went up to Loch Ness. I ended up going to Appinasheen.
Appinasheen, I've been there. I've been there myself.
It's a little tiny place in the middle of nowhere, and it's where Arlene's dad was the signal man for some years. That's where his family lived. But it's beautiful. But you know, like, I tried to tell her that like what Oldham were like, and when she was in Leeds, I told her to catch a certain bus, and I said, when you catch this certain bus, tell me what you think of like that bus journey and Scotland. And it's the same kind of bus journey, except for from Leeds to Manchester, just hills, but obviously it's mountains in Scotland. But you know, it's just beautiful. And so I've had a lot of it. And you said you'd seen me in Glasgow at Kelly J. King's.
That's right. On the 5th of February 2023, Kelly J. King Minshall had a rally, one of our Let Women Speak rallies, and I was at that, and I noticed that you and some colleagues were also in the crowd. And that was an important day because everybody there was of a certain type, you know, the people who would come along to listen to the Let Women Speak and were wanted to speak about these things, mainly women of a certain type. And I thought to myself, if Sturgeon has lost these people, then she's lost the country entirely. And lo and behold, 10 days later, on the 15th of February, Sturgeon resigned. And so the writing was on the wall for her. And again, it was just that whole pride thing, the I am correct on this gender nonsense, and I'm going to stick to it because I'm right, and I'm going to double down on it. And well, she found out that the rest of Scotland did not actually agree with her, including, as I say, a lot of her own supporters. And so she just lost the room, as they say, and that was definitely clear on that day that you were up in Glasgow. So it was great to it was great that you came up all the way up. What made you want to come up to that?
Well, it was Arlene, the ex-girlfriend. She passed away, God bless her soul. But she's from Glasgow originally, and we'd travelled up a few times. We've been down to the park. There was some other demonstrations there, and obviously, like if we were making our way up, we might stop in Glasgow before we travelled to Inverness, and then met a few people around the UK, and one of them, he lived just outside of Glasgow. I forget what it was called. So we stayed at his house, and then we've got a few other mates and that. And Arlene, like I said, Arlene's from Glasgow, so a lot of the people on the march and who go to the square regular, she knows them all. So yeah, but it was good. It was good, you know. I loved my time in Scotland. I really did.
It sounds like you've seen more of Scotland than, in fact, most Scottish people will have seen, to be frank with you. Most of us just stay in our own towns and dislike the people who are 5 miles down the road. That's the ridiculous thing about when I was growing up as well in the 80s. We used to have rivalries with a neighbouring village, which was maybe 2 miles away. And it was all the boys from there, you know, were always getting into trouble on a Friday night down the high street or something like that. I mean, that's the British tradition, is to so we've been extremely welcoming to people from like a million miles away. It's just beggars belief, because in the 1980s, you didn't like somebody if he came from the village down the road. Now, people from villages in the middle of Africa are coming here. And we've got to just treat them as if they're people from our own village. I'm thinking, though, that mentality is slowly changing, but and groups like yourself are helping to bring a degree of sense to society.
Tell us more about A Force for Good. Tell us more about that.
Oh, well, my organisation, A Force for Good, has been going since the 21st of March 2012. We just celebrated our 13th birthday last 10 days ago. And it was founded about 2 months after David Cameron said that he was going to be calling a referendum. And in the 2 months there between him saying that and us forming it, nothing happened on our pro-UK side. And we were the first.
You mean a referendum for Scottish independence?
It's a referendum for Scottish independence. He was going to call one, which he called on the 18th of September 2014. But nothing happened, and we thought we've got to do something. And so on the 21st of March, I set up a website, and this was really before Facebook and stuff like that, 2012, and began to draw in supporters. And as a consequence of that, time moved on. We won the election. We won the referendum in 2014, and we've just kept going. And this is my full-time work. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And we have people who help with our videos, and we're on all the social media platforms. We publish several times a day on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. We cast ourselves very widely in that sense. Some people just concentrate on one particular social media channel, but we've tried to do them all, as it were. And we've got varying degrees of success on various ones. Our videos go best on TikTok, as it happens. And Facebook's also another good channel for us. But we do our message on all of these things. And in the last couple of years, as the separation debate has tended to sideline as a consequence of the implosion of the SNP, as a consequence of that, we've tended to move to looking at the mass immigration debate as well, and trying to find policies to try to solve that. And that was in fact how I found Pat. About 3 weeks ago, I noticed a video that he had put up on X, formerly Twitter, about the UN Refugee Convention, of which I was knowledgeable already, but I hadn't really perceived the importance of it in the way that Pat explained it. And since then, I've been developing some articles that I've been putting out, taking that point and really hammering it home that we need to leave the UN Refugee Convention, because that's what legalizes all of these people. And they're not actually illegals. They should be illegals, but we're not going to be able to make them illegals until we leave the UN Refugee Convention and call them for what they are. And then when they're illegal, a whole range of policy options can open up, which I think the first policy option would be to send them all to prison, as I'm actually pushing. And I don't believe you'd have to do that to very many. And I don't believe you'd have to do that for very long. But they very quickly get the message.
Yeah,
that you cross the channel without due visas. You cross the channel that way without a due visa, you're going straight to prison. You're fast-tracked to prison. And goodness me, we've seen...
Got some bad interference coming here, John.
Paul, it's for Paul.
We can see how easily it is to fast-track people to prison. Keir Starmer has been doing it to a certain cohort recently, if you know what I'm referring to. So it would be very easy just to do, and it's really the only way that we're going to stop it, because all this carrying on, maybe we can send them to Rwanda, maybe we can send them to Albania. I mean, get real.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to bring it up. I was so delighted that you kind of saw what we was trying to say about that issue, and you've been promoting it as well. And incidentally, someone sent me a video today of Matt Goodwin. He's done a long video. I don't know if you've seen it. He's at the White Cliffs of Dover. He goes to Calais. He's done a very long video about the whole situation at Dover. And he does not mention the UN Refugee Convention.
Yeah.
I've seen that video, and I don't know why it's not being pushed.
Oh, is that not new? Is that not new? I thought it was like a newish video. Has it been around for a while?
I'm thinking of a kind of 3-minute, 5-minute video, and he's
this one's about 12 minutes.
12 minutes, maybe it's the same one. Is he sitting on a dinghy?
He's at
on the sea.
He's at the White Cliffs, and he's walking around Calais. And
I don't think that's a new one, but
let me just say to all the Nancy boy political parties that Pat McGinnis, so he was the person who talked about exit 1951 refugee convention. No other party had anything in the manifestos about the 1951 refugee convention. After some spectacular banner drops that we did, we even got Sadiq Khan talking about us. We riled up the left in London like they'd never been riled up before. And then...
let me just add to that, John, that our main aim is for Reform UK to put it in their policy and campaign to stop accepting refugees. That is the solution at Dover, and they will not do it. And we carry on. Most of the other smaller parties acknowledge it now, and it's in their manifesto, which is great. But the ultimate goal is for Reform to get it in there, get them talking about it, then Tories and Labour, they'll get scared, and they may implement the policy what will secure the border at Dover.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, just because Reform is not speaking about it at the moment, it doesn't mean that they're not going to when they realise that there's votes to be had by speaking about it. So I think you're right. And then once they start talking about it, Labour and Tories will be forced into talking about it. And then before you know it, everybody will be saying, well, of course, that's what we have to do. Of course. That's just the way that that these things work. You have to introduce the idea and then normalize it. And this is a particularly important one that we have to normalize, because you see the way that they speak. I was reading The National. I buy The National every day, which is a pro separation newspaper, and I buy it so that I know what they're coming up with and to keep aware of their latest ideas and so on. And they talk about these things as if it's perfectly natural that our country should be an open door to the world. And the politicians, the SNP politicians, and the ALBA politicians as well, which is a breakaway from the SNP, they speak about it as well. And for example, yesterday, apparently Pete Wishart, who is an ALBA MSP, says here, Wishart earns rap for telling Tories to shut up during debate. Anyway, what's exercising Pete Wishart here is that the government are making it a little bit harder for certain people to get British citizenship if they come across on the channel. Now, I need to look into that more, but it's obvious that's what should happen from the very start. If you come across as an asylum seeker, and even if you get refugee status, you should not be allowed to be put on a pathway to British citizenship. It should simply be enough that we've given you refuge. Giving you British citizenship on top of that is totally unnecessary. I mean, and that's from a humanitarian point of view as well. There's no reason for a refugee to get British citizenship. I mean, surely just being given some refugee status is enough. Anyway, I would say that you should not get refugee status. But Pete Wishart he's all up in arms. Isn't it terrible they're not going to get refugee status? I mean, where does this sort of thinking come from? It's just completely bonkers.
Well, will they put them in their house? That's the question, and none of them will. And I do actually say this to Nigel Farage and Matt Godwin, because there's over 1 million people looking for social housing. We're trillions in debt. Who's going to pay for it? Whose houses are they going to stay in, these people? And these people, like they keep saying, refugees welcome. Well,
it's a very good point. It's a very good point. There is literally no accommodation for them, and understandably so, because we cannot be building houses at the rate at which these people are coming in. As I said, gross immigration into Scotland very recently, last year or the year before, was equivalent to a town larger than Paisley. You can't be building that number of houses in a space of 18 months. And you can't be expected to, and you should never do so as well, because it's criminally illegal to do that to our beautiful country. So there is going to this is all going to come to a head, and it's for us, the alternative politicians, as it were, to have the answers for the people who will be in power at that time to implement. And because we can't allow the Pete Wisharts and the John Swinneys and the Kemi Badenochs and the Keir Starmers of this world to continue this decline that we've had constantly, because they don't have the answers. They're the ones who have led us into this situation. And if they had the answers, they would have had the courage to speak about them when they were in power. This is why I cannot take any Conservative MP seriously anymore, even if they seem to be saying stuff that's sensible. It's like, well, okay, you're one man.
Anyone who's still in that party now, who's completely destroyed our country, is an absolute traitor, and that it's disgusting what they've done.
Oh, it's beyond criminal on not just the demographic thing, but they also, as Paul alluded to earlier, they're the economic thing as well. The banking crisis of 2008, not a single banker was even taken to court, let alone convicted. Now, if I had been David Cameron at the time, I would have said, this is an excellent idea. Get these guys incarcerated for what they've done, and I'll show that I'm a man of the people. But no, he showed that he was a man of the City of London, and he didn't actually care that the bankers had impoverished and were, as Paul said, basically ripping us off, and continue to do so. So yeah, we need that change, but let's hope and pray that it's coming.
So Alistair, one thing I noticed about Scotland, especially in Inverness, is your public transport, and if they're expanding in Inverness and it's still only got one train line, how's that going to work? Because there was so many more people, and we heard in Inverness bus station, there's a big blonde woman. I forget her name. She's been there years. One of the stalwarts, and I even heard this woman talking about the increase in passengers. And
Really?
Inverness is a tiny little circle for a bus station, and it doesn't look like they're developing any of the transport. So how is it going to work with immigration? Are people going to how are they going to get there?
Well, it's a very good point. Transport is devolved to Holyrood, which means that it's probably only going to get worse. Anything that's devolved to Holyrood, hate to say it, but it's really bad news for whatever policy is devolved to Holyrood. And also, you've got to remember that the SNP they've got to appease the Greens, although they're not in government with the Greens still vote along with the SNP. And so they've got to keep the Greens happy. And one thing the Greens don't like, it's roads and cars and motorways and stuff like that. So there's a kind of a break upon the SNP to do anything really.
What's your feelings on the devolution? Do you think that things should go back to a centralised Westminster Parliament?
Well, that's a very good question. At the moment, I would say that sending everything back so that Keir Starmer's in charge of absolutely everything is a wee bit, what's the word?
Dangerous.
Dangerous. Poisoned chalice. I think that's a bit of a poisoned chalice. So,
our policy, because a lot of people are upset we don't have an English Parliament, and Scotland's got one, Wales got one. So our policy is to implement an English Parliament for 4 years, and once we've done that for 4 years, then we have a vote in the whole of the United Kingdom whether to go back to a centralised Westminster Parliament again.
Can't hear you, Paul. Can't hear you. No, you're dead low, and there's audio this thingy coming out of your sound. No, can't hear you. Go back out, come back in.
Yeah.
We can't hear you. And thank you everyone in the chat. Please like and subscribe to the channel. My subscribers are doing well, going up on my YouTube. Thanks a lot. Voxpol released another video of my interviews with James Harvey the other week about Oldham, and they've gone a bit viral. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel. I just want to I don't know if you anyone in your group are politically active. Are they running in elections or anything, Alistair?
A Force for Good isn't a party political organisation, so I'm not a member of any political party. However, we do have supporters who are members of all parties and none. And so I find it best as an organisation not to be a member of any party, so that I'm able to interview people like Pat from the NHP UK. I've interviewed David Curtin from Heritage. I've interviewed Reform Party people. I've interviewed Scottish Family Party people. So that's enables me to do that, and to be able to allow voices that might not be heard in the Scottish mainstream media to be heard. But obviously, I tend to support the parties that I interview. I haven't interviewed anybody that I would openly disagree with, as it were, because they can get heard in other fields, and that's why it's important, I think, for groups like ourselves and others to network as much as possible and retweet people, and to like and subscribe to each other's content and things like that. Because the other side do that all the time. I mean, they're masters at doing that sort of thing and building each other up, as it were. And so the extent to which we can build each other up is really, really crucial, because if we don't do it, who else is going to do it?
Yeah, we've got a couple of members in Scotland, so we're hoping next couple of years that they'll be running in elections, certainly. And I've got to get up there myself and spend some time with them. But no, it's interesting. It's interesting the difference between some of the people in Scotland. They seem really woke and a lot more, but obviously not. I'm guessing not everyone's like that, but it just seems like it's been really pushed. And Humsav and Sturgeon, they've messed up supporting that rubbish, both of them.
Yeah. I think devolution, one of the bad things about devolution is that it has given a platform to those sorts of people. So, I mean, in England, you just have to suffer Keir Starmer and his sort, whereas in Scotland, we've got the additional burden of having to suffer Nicola Sturgeon or Humza Yousaf or John Swinney, so we've got like double the burden carrying, as it were.
Can I just advertise next? Sorry, I'll just carry on. Go on.
No, go ahead. That was it.
I was just going to advertise next week's stream is with Niall Fraser's going to come on part of A Force for Good, and it's going to be about our policy on decriminalising drugs. And I think Niall disagrees with some of that, and it's going to be an interesting debate, because Niall, if you go to Niall's page on Twitter, Niall Fraser, he done an interesting video about a needle safe room in Glasgow, I think it is, and the problems it's causing in the local area, which is understandably not very good, having needles lying about everywhere. But yeah, we're going to have an interesting discussion next week about our policy of decriminalising illegal drugs. That means putting it in the hands of doctors for prescription only. It doesn't mean selling it in shops. So that'd be an interesting one for next week.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Niall's done some very good work on that. And he's mainly on Twitter at Niall Fraser 8. That's NIALLFRASER 8 on Twitter, and some of his videos have had tens of thousands of views. And he's very sincere, earnestly committed to these matters. He's a great fellow.
Yeah, I like Niall. I've seen him in the Scottish Family Party, and I like the stuff he's done. He's confronted Humsav Yousaf, has he, or a couple of top people at public meetings, and that's the kind of thing I do. And
good. Mm-hmm.
I like him for that. So
yeah, that would be a good show.
Our hours come up already. Oh, Alistair, honestly, it's been an honour, and it's been a really good chat. It's bringing back some memories for me. Arlene, great supporter, ex-girlfriend, great supporter of the camp, passed away a year ago. And it's awesome. But thank you very much, everyone in the chat. Please like and subscribe. We put all your links in the chat. We put A Force for Good up there, so make sure you check him out. And we've got Niall on next week, so it's going to be awesome. But thank you very much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.